Aisha, would you like to
Sorry.
share your screen? I can see you there. By the way, your very interesting poster is very blurred, so we can't appreciate what's on the poster.
In that case, I'm unblurring it.
That's better. Excellent. Okay.
So if
Would you like to share
yeah,
your screen?
if you're not interested in what I'm saying, hopefully you'll be interested in the poster. Share my screen. Hang on.
I should introduce Aisha is an associate professor in education in the School of Education at Leeds University, with expertise in online communication and chatbots, and has previously been involved in a chatbot research project funded by the European Union. And she is now ready to talk about dialogue for learning.
Thank you. So so what I'm going to talk about actually is a kind of whistle-stop tour of, I suppose, some kind of theoretical basis of dialogue for learning and why it matters. And what I'm going to do is, after I've sort of gone through my final slide will be a sort of a key reading, a review paper, not by me, sadly, but a review paper that will give you a deeper introduction to the sort of things that I'm talking about. I'm not going to go all the way back to Socrates and his dialogic method for learning, but I am going to go back to the work of Vygotsky, who proposed that learning is a social and a cultural process, and that we learn very largely through interaction with other people. That learning takes place, first of all, on a social plane, and then it moves to the individual plane. So we learn through interaction, through working with other people, through talking to other people, and we internalize what we learn, and it becomes our own knowledge. And this happens, first of all, obviously our first teachers are our parents, the first people from whom we learn, with whom we learn. And it's something that we do jointly. He talked about scaffolding, which our previous speaker has mentioned, and thank you very much for that really interesting keynote. And scaffolding is the process by which learners are provided with support that enables them to move to the next level. And Vygotsky called the cognitive space in which this happens the zone of proximal development. So this is the difference. The zone of proximal development is the difference between what a learner knows or what a learner can do individually and what they can do with the support of a more able peer. So this is the process of scaffolding. The more able peer, somebody who is just a bit further on in what they, well, actually not necessarily just a bit further on, but it may be somebody who's just a little bit further on, can help you to do as a learner or can help you to learn. But as we'll see later, this isn't a one-way process. So learning with the support of a more able peer doesn't mean that the more able peer gets nothing from it. The more able peer also can learn through this process. So this is a two-way process. And this zone of proximal development is really important because this is the space in which learning can take place. And it happens through interaction, through conversation, through dialogue. Levan Wenger talked about situated learning and communities of practice. Now I've put apprenticeship here because I think community of practice is a term that's often really misused, because what Levan Wenger looked at and what they talked about was very much to do with professional communities where people learn by being novices within a community and learning through observation, through what they called legitimate peripheral participation. So you start on the outside as a learner, you observe and you listen, and you develop your knowledge and your skills through that. They looked particularly at people like tailors and midwives, but it's being part of that community, both the community of practice and the discourse community, that learning takes place. So the conversations, the discussions, and the dialogue are crucial features of learning in community, learning in authentic contexts, learning where things are situated in the context, and where you're learning from experienced community members. Going back to Vygotsky's ideas, those are the more able peers. So they're not necessarily people who are set in a position of being a tutor. They're more experienced, but they're your peers that you're talking with. Now, a really crucial thinker in this area is Seymour Papert. And Papert talked about learning through making. So Papert took Piaget's ideas about learning by doing and took them onto another stage and talked about learning. He said it's not just a matter of doing, it's also making. You have to do something with the knowledge. And I'm very sorry, I've got a cat. The cat generally has, as Eric knows quite well, the cat generally has quite a lot to say, and may well be making an on-screen appearance. Papert's work involved the programming language Logo, and his whole idea was that the learner uses Logo to teach the computer. So for one of Papert's Logo, one of the things that Logo has been used for and is used for is teaching geometry. And what Papert said was, imagine that you put a child into mathland. So just as a child learns their own language from interacting with their parents, from interacting with other people, from getting the things that they want, successfully getting the things that they want. Imagine if we put them through into this place called Mathland, where they had to interact with somebody who is effectively a native speaker of mathematics and teach that person how to do various things. So the simplest thing that you can teach a Logo turtle to do is draw a square. And you have to give it, as a learner, a set of instructions to draw a square. And you know you've achieved it when the turtle successfully draws the square. You get what you want. So what Papert was saying is that what you need to do as a learner is to articulate your knowledge and to get something, to do something with the knowledge that you have. You won't learn it properly if it just sits there. You actually have to make something, or you have to, apologies for the cat. Yes. So he talked about the importance of teaching. So coming back to where I said that with Vygotsky's idea of the more able peer, it's not a one-way process. If we take Papert's ideas, we can see that the more able peer is also developing and consolidating their knowledge through the process of being that more able peer and providing the support. So right the way through this, we have the importance of talking and of dialogue. So Neil Mercer, and I've put Mercer et al., not because that's one particular paper, but Neil Mercer at Cambridge has done work with a lot of various other people, including Lynn Dawes, for example, and Rupert Waidriff. So there's a number of publications that come from this work. And what Mercer and collaborators did was they looked at children talking in the classroom, and they identified three key types of classroom talk. So they talked about, they found cumulative talk. Now, if you've got this going on, what's happening is that the participants in the conversation very largely agree. There's little building on the knowledge. There's not much consideration of alternative perspectives. It's not going to provide good quality talk for learning because it doesn't go anywhere. The whole point of dialogue for learning is that we are actually developing arguments, that we're looking at alternative perspectives, that we're trying to work out why things happen. And you won't get that if you've just got people saying, oh yeah, I can see that. So if you imagine a group of primary school children around a water tank and they're trying to find out why, why something different shapes sink or float, if they all say, oh yeah, that one sinks, yeah, that one sinks, yeah, that one floats, but they don't ask why and they don't try out different ideas, they're not actually going to get very far towards understanding the physics, which is what they're supposed to be exploring. You also have disputational talk where the participants largely disagree, but again, they're not building arguments, they're not exploring the ideas. So according to Mercer and his collaborators, what we want to see in classroom talk is what they called exploratory talk, which is where you get challenges to ideas, you get clarifications, you look for examples, you try to find illustrations, you explore alternative ideas and questions about what if. So if we were doing this floating and sinking idea, you'd be saying, well, what if we try a bigger piece of plasticine? What if we try making it really flat? What if we, what happens? Well, okay, that ball sinks, but what if we make a hole in it? So you're trying these alternative ideas, and a really important exponent of this was my late, sadly late colleague Phil Scott, who looked at, who developed a communicative approach to science teaching, which was based exactly on this idea of exploratory talk, of dialogue for learning. So this kind of argumentation, developing ideas, challenges, clarifications, this isn't just about this can be used in subjects such as physics, where there is a sort of a core of knowledge, a body of knowledge that we want students to learn. It's not just about things like personal social education, where we're exploring philosophies and ideas and moralities. It can also be used for subjects like science, which is what Phil Scott and Eduardo Mortimer did very successfully with their communicative approach to science teaching. So in exploratory talk, the sort of things that we would want to see happening are questions such as why? Why does this happen? Why do you think that? How is this happening? What happens if we try? What's the alternative perspective? What would somebody who disagreed with you say? And the answers we might get back would be things like, because, well, therefore, well, if we do this, I think that will happen. So these are the exploratory ideas that we would see in good quality, effective dialogue for learning. And of course, we do see critical thinking is a skill in its own right. So I've talked about dialogue for learning, and it is important. It is going to help our students to learn and to become more flexible in their thinking, which is where the critical thinking comes in. It's a valued skill. We need our students at all levels to be able to develop skills in argumentation. We need them to be able to defend their position. We need them to be able to explore alternative perspectives, and if they don't agree with those perspectives, to be able to say what's wrong with them, to be able to find inconsistencies, to be able to solve problems. And I've put media literacy at the bottom, because it's a huge topic that I don't want to go into, but being able to understand and explore arguments is something that is going to, that helps in society with understanding arguments that are put forward by media, within media, and considering those arguments and finding your own perspectives and your own views, rather than just simply accepting whatever your chosen media says, whether it's the Guardian or the Daily Express. You still need to be able to interpret it and understand the arguments. And these skills are developed through the same exploratory dialogue that we can use for teaching, for learning in all areas.
Okay, Aisha, I think you finished.
Well, this is just my final slide, actually, which is just, there was a paper way back in 1980 from Taylor where he proposed 3 roles for a computer. It's very out of dated, but I think still valuable, because I think the roles for AI that may be useful are facilitating dialogue between learners, which is something where technology has been explored for quite some time, but also as the more able peer, where a lot of the time when we think about using digital technology for teaching, we're thinking about it as a tutor which has the answers. But maybe what we need is technology that has the right questions to enable learners to find the answers. And that's it.
Okay, thank you very much, Aisha. An interesting, a different perspective. I mean, as a computer scientist, to think about data sizes and training sets and things, but you're actually thinking much more about the educational perspective.